Hey, it's Chris here from Hard Rockology Radio. I'm talking with the one and only Eddie Trunk. Eddie, thanks for taking time out to talk to Hard Rockology.
Thank you, Chris. Good to talk to you.
So how did you become the ambassador for the Hair Nation Festival coming up next month in Southern California? I mean, how did that come about?
Well, I have a show. Obviously, the festival is named after a channel on Sirius XM, which I have a show on every week. But even before the show was going to be called the Hair Nation Festival, the promoters of the show reached out through my booking agent, asked me if I would be interested in being involved in it, and I said, yeah, of course. And then shortly afterwards, I heard that Hair Nation as a channel was going to have their name on it, and I said, well, it makes even more sense now because I do a show for them. So it turned out to be great across the board, and I'm grateful that Live Nation asked me to be a part of it, and here we are.
The one thing that I'm kind of upset about right now is my Saturday nights are a lot different without that metal show on. Any plans for another show coming back? I know VH1 Classic got canceled. It's totally not your fault. I mean, people made it sound like nobody was watching the show. I find it hard to believe. It was very entertaining, and you know, I mean, you always read stuff on the internet about people saying this and that, but I mean, any idea or anything coming up?
Well, the truth of the matter is that we knew that metal show was, we knew that VH1 Classic was going to become MTV Classic almost a year ago. This was not new news at all to us. We knew this was happening, and it's the reason why the show was not renewed, because the channel was going away. So you don't spend money on making... That metal show was the only reason why, for the most part, people watched VH1 Classic. We became the flagship for the channel, which is great. But then when the network decided to get rid of the channel, well, then they don't need the flagship show, so they didn't want to spend money on it.
Yeah.
The problem with VH1 Classic is that it was never, ever set up to produce a new show. It was made purely to show old videos and old content that they could just put on. It wasn't designed to put money into making new shows. But we became an anomaly on that channel, and it was very difficult to work with the confines of the channel. We couldn't have music in the show because they wouldn't pay for it. Everybody knows the channel was never made HD. We had to do less and less episodes every year because they didn't want to spend the money. It all came down to money. So they were great, and it was great for while it lasted, but unfortunately we were on a channel that couldn't fully support an in-house produced show. So now, as you mentioned, VH1 Classic has become MTV Classic, and they're still showing old episodes because it's basically the same channel with a different name and some different stuff on it. And I don't know where this is going to lead. I certainly hope that someone picks up the show, whether it be MTV Classic or another network. It's out of my hands, but the minute that someone picks it up and wants to do it again, I'm there tomorrow. It's not even a problem, but it's out of my hands. So I can't, I've spent my whole life in the music business, I can't worry about things I can't control. It didn't blow up because nobody was watching it. It didn't blow up and fall apart because any of us had demands or issues. It didn't, there's none of that. It just went away because the channel went away.
Yeah.
And now we hope that we can find a new home. In the meantime, I continue to do 2 radio shows a week. I continue to do my podcast. I have a major new thing that's going to be announced soon on the radio side. It's going to be major. And I have 2 or 3 new TV projects in the works. So I got a lot of new projects. It's an exciting time for me, but that doesn't mean for a minute if somebody calls, I won't do that metal show tomorrow.
Yeah. So what do you think of the state of the music business nowadays? I mean, I know record stores are pretty much all gone now. Do you think people really care if a band makes a new record anymore, or they just go to shows now and be nostalgic, like kind of like what Hair Nation is in a way?
It depends. I think people's relationship with music has totally changed. I think that the entire business is built on live touring. The entire business model is tour. It's all about playing live. And that's why you're seeing more festivals than ever before in America. You're seeing more bands touring than ever before all over the world. You're seeing bands playing cruises and corporate events and places they never played before and places they never played, ways they never played before. It's all about getting on the road, selling merch, selling concert tickets. Everything is pushed towards that. So that's the big difference. You know, Peter Criss told me not too long ago. So back in the 70s, we toured to sell the record because that's where we made our money. Now it's the complete opposite. Now you tour to make money, and the record's just a promotional tour.
Yeah, it's the total opposite. Because when I was growing up in New Jersey in the 70s and 80s, it was the same thing. A band hits the road for a year and supports the record.
Yeah.
You know.
So the business model is on its head. Listen, it'll all figure itself out, and the strong will always survive. But I wish people cared more about new music and new bands, and there were more outlets for some of this stuff to be played. I think it's really important.
What do you think? Because the internet destroyed that, people can get everything for free now. So why am I going to pay for a record if I could just download it for free?
Well, they can get it for free, but the other side of it is that it also has become very cluttered and convoluted. So there's so much music out there that it's hard to find it. It's hard to know what to care about. Everybody has a song, everybody has a band, everybody has an album, everybody has a stream, a download. It used to be that if someone handed you a CD, that was a special, unique, cool thing, that you had reached a certain level. Now anybody that can hand you a CD, anybody can say, listen to this link. Very hard to kind of differentiate. The market's more flooded than ever, and to try to figure out what stands out and what's good.
So, you got to be happy about one thing that happened this past year. Hall of Fame, Deep Purple finally got in. I know you were really upset that the Hall didn't have them in for such a long time, myself included. Thoughts on that and how the band handled the situation without Blackmore playing? I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I always thought Deep Purple was the biggest snub ever. It doesn't matter about your personal taste if you're a fan or not. For history purposes, the biggest snub ever. And fortunately, that has now been corrected. Unfortunately, they snubbed him for so long. John Lord was not alive to see it, and of course Richie Blackmore didn't go. But they did the best they could. I think it was great that Coverdale and Hughes were included, and finally, listen, there's finally starting to be. Nobody's been a bigger person to hammer the Hall of Fame for a longer time than I have. But you also have to give credit where credit's due, and I think they're finally starting to come around. I think they're finally starting to get it, and there's been some great improvement. You finally have Kiss, Alice Cooper, Rush, Purple. You finally so there's progress. It's horrific they had to wait that long, but there's progress.
Yeah.
And they about a year and a half ago they made me a voter, so now I have a vote. So now I can actually help maybe push a little bit more than I have in terms of just screaming. So we'll see where it all goes, but they have made some progress. I think you got to at least give them credit for that.
Yeah, exactly. And it always seems like that hard rock, heavy metal is always taking a backseat to everything, except for, record sales, and the fans love it. I mean, I don't get it, but it's just never been anybody's favorite as far as critics are concerned. I mean, look at Rolling Stone did to like Led Zeppelin in the 70s. Could care less about them, but now they're like one of the greatest bands ever.
Yeah, it'll always be the under the radar sort of marginalized stuff. It'll always be the biggest niche in the world. People want to call it niche and whatever they want to say about it, but it'll always be there. It'll never go away, and I think it's in a pretty good place right now, and I think it's only going to get better.
I got to get my UFO question in. I know you're a big UFO fan, so 3 essential UFO studio albums. I know you're a big fan of the live album, but if you had to pick 3 UFO albums to start your collection with, what would they be? I'm thinking from 74 to 83.
Oh yeah, I know. It's so hard. I would say Force It. I would say Obsession. A lot. Oh man, but then what about Lights Out? And I want to include a Chapman record. Okay, let's go. I hate leaving
It's
out
tough.
Obsession. It's so tough.
It's
All right,
tough.
let's go Force It, Lights Out, and No Place to Run.
Really, no place to run out of the Chapman.
Well, Chapman and some pop, because I love Wild Willing, I love Mechanics, and I like Making Contact too. But I would go No Place to Run. No Place to Run's an amazing record.
I find myself, as I've been a UFO fan myself for a while, I find myself reaching for the Chapman stuff more than the Schenker stuff.
I love the Chapman stuff, and I gotta say, credit where credit is due, man. The stuff, some of the songs and stuff they've made with Vinnie Moore, is absolutely phenomenal, and in their last 4 or 5 records, about half of their last 4 or 5 records has been unbelievable with Vinny. There's some modern UFO classics that they made on recent records with Vinny Moore.
So I always wondered, why do they never play any of the stuff with Chapman live? They do occasionally, but they always like to stick to maybe Strangers in the Night. Like, it's like people that go to UFO shows are going to know their whole catalog, I think, personally.
Yeah, yes and no. There's still a ton of people, though, that are all about the Schenker stuff, and I think that's their bread and butter, and they don't tour all that often, and I think if they come here, like I got some friends on the guest list to go see them when they played the Whiskey recently here, and they put in a couple songs from the recent records and a couple Chapman songs, and those people call me and they're like, "Oh man, they were great, but I wish they would have just played all the Schenker stuff," you know. And that's anybody that knows them, not unfortunately, but the truth is they know them for that stuff for the most part. That's considered the iconic stuff.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, I got time for a Stump the Trunk.
Is it UFO related?
No, it's not UFO related.
All right.
All right. There have been 8 classic sweet songs recorded by hard rock heavy metal bands. Can you name them?
How many did you say? There's 8?
There's 8 by 12 bands. So there's 8 sweet classic songs covered by 12 hard rock heavy metal bands.
Well, Ballroom Blitz by Crocus comes to mind.
Okay, you got that one.
Ace Frehley did Fox on the Run.
That's
recently.
2.
Oh my God, there's so many, and I don't know how.
Just like a TV show right now.
Did somebody do Love Is Like Oxygen?
No, they did not.
Somebody should.
Yeah, they should.
I don't know, man.
All right, I'll go through them real quick. Saxon did Set Me Free, along with Striper.
Oh yeah, so did
Striper.
But no, Set Me Free was also done by
Vince Neil.
No, and it was also done by that Bay Area thrash band, Heathen.
Okay.
So there's another one for you.
Okay.
Set Me Free was done by a ton of people.
You got Def Leppard doing Hellraiser. Raven did Hellraiser back in '81.
All right.
Okay. Joan Jett did AC/DC, along with Vince Neil.
Right.
Fox on the Run, you already said Ace Frehley, but Girl School also covered that song. Def Leppard did Action.
Right.
And Black and Blue did Action back in '84. Little Willie was done by Poison, and Pat Benatar did No You Don't.
That's good. Sweet's the most underrated, like the band that has the most impact on hard rock that nobody even knows.
Exactly. That's
crazy.
I feel UFO is the same way.
Yeah.
All right, I know you got a lot of interviews to do. You got a show coming up tonight. I want to thank you for being part of Hard Rockology Radio, and